All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's right. We're back for another one. I am Raba, the CMO of Triple Whale, and I am here with my co-host, partner in crime, and gem of a human, Max Blanc. And today we're joined by Pranay Srinivasan. Dang it, I practiced it so many times and I messed it up. But he is an absolute titan in the supply chain. 26 plus years. He runs an incredible software platform for supply chain and financing called Manufacture. With all the nonsense and hullabaloo going on in the supply chain, we wanted to bring you one of the experts, and we have. Pranay, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's really good to meet you. And Max, is always great to catch up again with you. Max is a great friend, and he's been, one of our earliest customers in Manufacture. He's there when we had very little software, and has always been a wonderful supporter of ours. Excited to be on the podcast. I haven't been on a podcast in many, many years, so this is awesome.
Oh, yeah. That's fantastic. And so I'm out in Austin, our satellite campus. Max is in Columbus. Where does this podcast find you today, Pranay?
I'm in LA, in Culver City.
Oh, cool. Actually, I'm heading out that way for Geek Out shortly. Okay, let's drill into it. Max, do you want to take it away?
Yeah, sure. Well, first, let's hear a bit about Pranay's journey and what he's been doing for his 23 years. Just maybe take 60 seconds right now or 2 minutes to go through some of your journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was born in India, brought up in Bombay. It's called Mumbai now, but I know it as Bombay because that's what I grew up in before name was changed. I went to college there, high school, all of it done there. And I started working in my family business, my father's business, very early when I was about 14, 15 years old, mostly lifting boxes and moving goods out of warehouses, earning your keep, and then basically figuring out how to work with the government on exports and imports and documentation, and then with banking and then transactions, and figured out how to do sourcing and understood how to do, my first product I sourced was steel toys out of Delhi for a customer in Holland. That they were basically buying, steel toys that were made authentically by hand-rolled steel, and were sold as curios, hand-painted. Those old, fire engines, like train engines and stuff like that. So they were sold as curios in Europe, and I remember sourcing those in 1994. That's when I first started my sourcing journey. I was still just out of 10th grade. So That's when I started sourcing and manufacturing and supply chain, and I worked with my family business for a while, and then I started my own business in 2009, also doing supply chain. I've done multiple products, multiple industries, multiple geographies. For the last 8 years, I've been trying to build digital platforms for supply chain and manufacturing and sourcing. My last startup was called Source Easy. Source Easy basically was a vertically integrated manufacturing platform for clothing. It was venture-backed by lots of very well-known Silicon Valley investors, including Bullpen Capital, Joanne Wilson, Bloom Ventures in India, 500 startups, Structure Capital. And, that company, we had 5 offices in 5 different countries. We had 3 offices in the US, and we were essentially, imagine what Flexport does, but for clothing. And that's what we did. That company didn't end in really good circumstances in 2017. It taught me a lot. The one thing it taught me the most was, be open and transparent about everything that's going down. And, it's really, Max knows this also, that, investors find it very hard to trust founders who keep information from them. If you're not over communicating, then the investors don't trust you. And so I was basically having daily board meetings, weekly board meetings as the company was entering into, a tailspin. And it was extremely horrific circumstances, but the company ended up filing for Chapter 7 bankruptcy. And then, a week later, those investors put fresh money into a new company that I started, which is now Manufactured. And the reason they did that was because they knew exactly what was going on as it happened. And now I run a company called Manufactured since 2018, which is basically a platform to supply and finance inventory. It's different from what we did before in many nuanced ways, but the core idea is the same. Inventory manufacturing is broken, supply is broken, sales is broken, financing is broken. There's a lot of people who have been running manufacturing and finance and sales very different in silos. If you want to manufacture your product, you go to a factory. If you want to ship your product, you go to a logistics provider. If you want to finance your product, you go to a bank. If you want to finance your receivables, you go to a factor. If you finance your e-commerce, you go to some of these online lenders. And it's all being siloed into all different things when it's just one product that is driving all of your business that has to be tracked from the time it's made to the time tracked to the time it's sold, and figure out how to make more of it if it's succeeding and less of it if it's not succeeding, and figure out how to keep your business successful. That simple thing has basically been complicated and divided into so many 40 different ways. And to think that it's a $3-4 trillion industry that has been disrupted is something that I feel needs to be corrected. So we combine finance and supply into a single system, and we're building software, we're building systems, we're going to build our own credit lines, we're going to build our own businesses to basically help merchants of any sort buy and sell product without having to worry too much about the supply and the finance in separate places.
Very good. Just working with Pranay, with my supply chain, I can tell you that he knows what he's doing, knows what he's talking about. He's extremely transparent and has been a guide for me throughout my journey. It's great to have him here. So we'll get into the value add segment, and I'm just going to fire away some questions, and we'll have a conversation around a few different topics here.
Can I cut you off there real quick, Max? Let's drill into something, because I know we have some really high level people, but we also have some people at a different stage in their journey. Pranay, can you just kind of explain like what you mean when you say supply chain, and kind of just go into like a basic like 101 primer on supply chain and why it matters for a business?
Yes, absolutely. So if you look at the evolution of commerce, if it starts from people in the first century when they basically took camels along the Silk Route and actually started creating bazaars to sell product, it's essentially, it started out with a demand and supply, which is at its most basic reason satisfying someone's need. Now needs have evolved over time, and people's need to be satisfied by a product is now more emotional than it is transactional. For example, you go to a store to buy rice because it feeds your stomach and it makes you feel good. But you buy organic basmati rice because it feeds your stomach, but it also feeds your soul and your emotional need to feel like you're eating a good product that's actually organic, that's good for the industry. So you're now solving multiple needs, and you're feeding some multiple needs by creating the product and supplying it. Now, if you look at the evolution of commerce, whether it's physical or digital, people have basically reached the peak of base level supply and base level feeding of needs, and they have started creating tertiary needs and ancillary needs, which is how brands are created. Now, the reason why a brand exists is because it feeds your soul as much as it feeds your need. And the reason it feeds your soul is because you feel some sort of a connection to it through either the story it tells or whatever it does. Now, if you look at the evolution of digital commerce over the last 20-ish years, that's literally what has happened. If you look at it, but it's been accelerated. It's the digital commerce has accelerated in 20 years what physical commerce did in 2,000 years. If you look at physical commerce coming from the time, from the time of Old Testament or whatever it is, from 2,000-3,000 years, that's how trading actually started. Is you started with barter, then you started with money, and then you started with, far more sophisticated ways of moving goods across countries because you're finding something that people need and you're making money on it. Now, if you look at e-commerce basically started out with, highly basic things, which is, can I find something on the internet? Then it went to, okay, can I buy something on the internet? Then it went to, okay, how do I differentiate what I'm selling on the internet? And I think Bonobos was one of the first brands that actually showed you that you can not just have to buy basic stuff on the internet, you can actually create something that is unique for a customer, which is the curved waistband that they created. Now, if you extrapolate that and take that forward to, the millions and millions of brands you have online right now, brands started out by drop shipping product. They drop ship product because they find something that satisfies a basic need. I mean, like Max basically wanted to find a solution for increasing the volume of hair that women have without making it look like crap. And he took something that was aesthetically interesting, like a hair braid, and basically started pushing it through. But over time, Max also realized that instead of just selling a hair braid, you're now selling an experience that includes the hair braid at the core of it, and that experience making people feel better about their appearance. And now you'll be able to elevate the story and make a brand out of it. Now you cannot sell crappy product that just satisfies a need. You have to sell beautiful elevated product in beautiful elevated packaging with a beautiful elevated story that appeals to people not just at the basic sense but at an aesthetic elevated sense. That
Yep.
means you have to create a unique product. Now, products come in multiple levels of customization. You can start with a highly basic product which you buy off the shelf. It's like going and buying a stick of cheese. You can buy a stick of cheese off the shelf, and that cheese, somebody decided what to put in it, somebody decided how to make it, somebody decided what shape to give it, what to package it, where to sell it, and what to price it at, and you just picked it up and did it. You drill all the way down to the materials, and you drill all the way down to the packaging, all the way down to the quality of the product, all the way down to the base layer of what makes it special. And then you've suddenly figured out how to unwrap that entire product. Now, e-commerce has been going deeper and deeper, deeper down the rabbit hole, starting from, okay, I just want to take and resell this box of cheese, to I want to figure out which cows the milk comes from to where the cheese can be made. And what manufacturer does with the supply chain is basically help you expand that all the way down to which cows to buy your milk from, rather than you just buying a stick of cheese.
Right. Pranay, an interesting thing, in terms of like sort of that, are you going to just resell a stick of cheese, or are you going to sell the experience of what it's like to eat this artisan cheese that's made on this like farm that has a whole family story to it, like, right? So like you can almost extrapolate that and compare it to like, okay, an Amazon purchase, right? Of some kind of generic brand, to the artisan cheese, right? It's more of like a D2C, direct to consumer brand with the whole story behind it. So that's
right.
I think the Amazon's actually interesting because in a way, Amazon drives a ton of utility. However, that doesn't really carry over. There's no halo effect for the brand. And so it feels like a Costco almost. Like you can still buy fancy stuff in Costco, right? Like you can get nice electronics, like all this stuff, but you don't really connect with that brand versus like, put it another way, buying an iPhone in Costco is totally different than buying it in the Apple store, right? That's a kind of interesting paradox there. That was brilliant, Pranay.
Yeah.
So,
great.
Can I interject one more question, Max?
Go for it.
Because out of the three of us, you two will know more or forget more than I'll ever know about supply chain. But what are kind of, when you look at like DTC businesses like Max's and per se, what are the biggest cost drivers in the supply chain?
So if you look at a supply chain, I think you could either look at them as cost or you can look at them as levers, right? So there's multiple costs that you have to balance in a supply chain, or there are multiple levers you can pull to figure out what you want to work on and what you don't want to work on. So 99% of the time when I meet somebody who comes in and says, oh, I want to fix my supply chain, I'm like, you don't want to fix something that's not broken. So you have to figure out how to balance levers with your cost. So I have a customer coming into me and saying, oh my God, China has tariffs of 12%. I need to move to Vietnam immediately. I'm like, okay, so let's do the math. What do you buy? Okay, I buy, shovels. I buy shovels to sell to miners, and I'm buying 10,000 shovels a year. And 10,000 shovels a year costs me $10. It's $100,000, and now 12% of that is $12,000. So I'm going to lose $12,000 on 10,000 shovels, and so therefore, if I move to Vietnam, I will basically save that 12,000. I said, okay, but you're assuming that number one, you will be able to buy those shovels for $10 out of Vietnam, as you can out of China. Number two, you're assuming that when you stop working in China and you move to Vietnam, you'll find the same vendor that can do the same quality and the same amount of production. You're then going to assume that the materials you're getting out of Vietnam are not actually sourced in China, which means that the materials coming from China take longer and you're going to lose your lead time. But the most important thing is you're going to have to still coordinate Vietnam like you do China, and the switching cost of a vendor going from China to Vietnam is 3 to 6 months, which means that you lost 2,500 shovels of sale when you moved from China to Vietnam, which means that you lost $25,000 of sale moving from China to Vietnam. That's just your cost, not even what you would sell on. So I suggest you don't move and keep pay the $12,000 and absorb it and just add that cost to your sell rather than you move from China to Vietnam. Now, if you were selling 1 million shovels, let's talk about that separately. But if you're selling 10,000 shovels, don't move. So when you talk about costs, I talk about levers because the cost affects the levers. Now, when you talk about a supply chain, you basically have basically 4 aspects to a supply chain. You have the materials, you have the assembly, you have the transportation, and you have the packaging. I mean, you have the packaging and then the transportation. So either way you look at it, right? Now, when you also have duties and taxes that are included in the transportation. So you have the assembly, you have the materials, you have the assembly, packaging, you have the assembly, you have the transportation that includes the actual shipping of the product, and then the duties and taxes. I can go down deeper into that, where the shipping includes your origin shipping, which is basically going from the factory to the port. You can have the actual shipping, which is between the port to the port it's arriving at, and then the shipping from the port all the way to your door. And 9 times out of 10, you almost underestimate what those cost, and you only focus on the port to port because that's like the big story of the world today. But sometimes those internal shipping costs can actually overrun what you're doing on the port as well.
That's so fascinating, and that's kind of known as the last mile problem, right? Where getting it the last mile is kind of really, really hard in terms of logistics and expense.
That's different. The last mile I'm talking about is at a wholesale level when it's coming to your 3PL or to your warehouse.
Oh, yeah, got it. Yeah, I'm talking from... I'm talking warehouse to consumer. I'm tracking now. Okay, yep.
You're talking about... So there's 2 kinds of last miles. One is when you have a grocery problem where you're buying from a local store and they have to deliver it to your home. Somebody just walks over and gives you the product. Normally, if you walk to the store, you are the last mile. So you walked to the store, picked up the product and came home. You completed your own last mile logistics. So you literally paid yourself for doing that last mile logistics. But let's say they deliver to you, and then that last mile is basically from wherever that product is sitting to your home. That's their last mile. Whereas our last mile is from the port to that person's warehouse, from where they will then sell it to the consumer.
Oh, that's super illuminating. And so I guess small digression there. Is that one of the reasons why Amazon acquired Whole Foods, was to essentially eliminate a lot of their last mile costs, because they can just ship it to a Whole Foods now, and you can pick it when you go to Whole Foods, you can just pick up your Amazon package versus having them waste money on shipping it from their distributor to the home?
I also think that Amazon wanted to get into the more premium range of the Whole Foods consumer. I also think that Amazon wanted to basically figure out how to crack grocery. Amazon hasn't cracked grocery. They haven't cracked grocery even today. They don't know that the Fresh app is all over the place, Whole Foods is all over the place. They still haven't cracked grocery, and that's the reason why Whole Foods was a piece of it. And I think the optional value on basically acquiring Whole Foods for $13 billion for a $2 trillion company was on the margin worth it for
totally
them to
right.
do. So that's probably why they did it. But the lockers that you're talking about, I think that that's an expanding business that they're going to get to. And if they can actually eliminate their last mile by doing lockers, it actually saves a layer of complexity on the logistics, which is the routing logistics. That's basically the problem.
The traveling salesman.
Yeah,
that's fascinating. Yeah, that's incredible. Wow. Whew, I'm blown away.
Yeah, you can definitely see why working with a guy like Pranay is very helpful when it comes to running a D2C brand. There's so many complexities you're not even thinking about. From engineering the packaging to be able to ship better domestically, right?
Yeah.
To everything.
Yeah. We had fun with that. We had a lot of fun with that. We tried to
I was able to
crack. Yeah. We cracked the lowest USPS shipping fee for Max with the sleeve.
Yeah, basically going from spending, let's say, $3.50 a package to ship it to the customer to like just under $1.
Like 75 cents or something, I remember now.
It was wild. So there's so much.
That's something you feel for sure. That's some savings right there, Max.
Especially when Facebook starts to go crazy.
Like if you're doing 1 million boxes, if you're doing 1 million units, then that's like easily $3-4 million a year that you save on shipping.
Yeah.
That's bananas. That is bananas.
It's good stuff. It's good stuff.
Do we want to get into kind of what's kind of going on now in terms of the supply disruptions, the traffic jams at the ports, kind of what the knock-on effects are going to be from that? And then I guess, Pranay, maybe you could take us from the start of how did we get here? How did the supply chain kind of just crumble and disintegrate? And then from that kind of take us through up to kind of today with Nike not even being able to buy yarn.
Yeah, so I'm not a macroeconomist. I'm no kind of economist, but I'm going to try and give you my theory on what happens. And I'm 100% sure I'll get emails and, comments about it when you guys post this podcast saying, the guy didn't know shit or what he's talking. But here's my theory. If you take, so there's there's a few components to this. First is you basically start any material with a commodity. Any
Yep.
product that you create starts with a commodity. That commodity is either grown or mined or created from, in case of an artificial commodity like polyester or something like that. So if you look at any plastic-based product, it starts also with plastic. Plastic is created. You start with any natural product. It is either grown or mined, and that's basically the three ways that commodity comes in. Now, in two out of these three commodities, one is industrial, the other two are semi-industrial, but they all rely on either some kind of labor or some kind of geopolitical conversation that happens. There's a reason China invests so much money in Africa, so much money in South America, is
Yep.
because they need
Australia.
those raw materials to come back to them to create these materials, these finished. They need commodities to come back to them at a cheap price, which they control using infrastructure, so that they can bring back the commodity to create raw materials, which are intermediaries that can then turn into finished products. So you take a commodity, then you have an intermediate, processed intermediary, and then you have finished products. And so
Yep.
everything that finishes in your hands or in front of you started with a commodity. You could talk about iron, talk about ore, talk about steel, talk about any metal, talk about any wood. You talk about anything. It's either grown or mined, something like that. Now, what has happened is three things happened at the same time, right? The first thing that happened is people went into lockdown during the pandemic, and supply reduced like crazy because demand fell off a cliff. Now, when demand fell off a cliff, what happened is people who had a surplus of commodities, a surplus of items, only a very few number of those commodities were in demand, and a lot of the other commodities were basically, I mean, Max knows what happened to the price of melt loan during PPE. Like, we were tracking it on an almost daily basis, and it fell off a cliff in September because everything started coming back. Last year of September, it started coming back to normal. But a commodity price is driven by three things, right? It's driven by demand, it's driven by supply, and it's driven by speculation. Those are the only three things that drive the price of a commodity. Now, in the pandemic, what ended up happening is, first of all, you have a limited supply of these commodities. The second thing that you had is an unlimited amount of printing of money in every country possible. And it's not just one. Normally, the reason you have a financial crisis is because it is localized to one country. In 2008, America had a financial crisis, everyone else didn't. In 2002, Europe had a financial crisis, America didn't. In 1999, the US and Europe had a financial crisis, Asia didn't. Asia had a financial crisis, the Americans didn't. So why is localized? Why it's separated and localized is because those are highly local issues that are happening that then may ripple across other countries, but don't ripple in that way because the governments don't have to step in. When you have a health pandemic like we did, China prints money, Japan prints money, India prints money, Europe prints money, US prints money, and what happens is, as a result, everyone is printing money and everyone's basis is going down. And so when everyone prints money, all that money has to enter the circulation in some way. So money enters circulation in three ways, right? It enters into circulation by basically giving it to the people, literally. The second is by entering the capital markets. And the third is government spending. That's the only three ways that money probably enters circulation. So if it enters by giving people, that's the stimulus that you've been seeing. It enters the capital markets, so they basically bought back a shit ton of their either debt or basically increased debt to basically buy back other people's money. Now, because that money goes in from the top down, a lot of the people who have very strong equity values, who basically own a lot of stock, end up concentrating a lot of that money with them. And so that's the reason why you see Amazon worth trillions of dollars, is because people who got money printed and basically could put that money, they put it straight into stock market. And when they put that in the stock market, the most valuable companies appreciate. And when those valuable companies appreciate, the people who own those companies, their net worth appreciates. And that's basically the second thing that happened. The third thing that happened was government spending. And government spending hasn't really kept up with the amount of employment that is needed because people are getting free money directly through stimulus, so they don't want to work. And so when you take all these three things that are happening, private enterprises are finding it harder and harder to find people to work for them. Labor costs are going through the roof because people are having problems with liquidity of cash. And the third part is wealth is not being created equally all over the place because the money spending isn't trickling down fast enough. So Now what is happening is the money that was chasing a return, which is coming in through the capital markets, starts chasing money in commodities and in through speculation, and which is why the cost of commodities start going up too. Now, if you're not buying commodities and you're speculating in commodities, you're betting on the price that commodities are going to go up. Suddenly, because the price of commodities goes up, the price of the materials go up. If the price of materials go up and the labor is less, you can't find enough material to actually hit the actual market because prices that want to buy the product are not going up. That's because the demand is suppressed. So imagine that you have a big box store that basically doesn't know how you're going to sell 10,000 units, and you decide to place an order for 5,000 units, but those 5,000 units now, because the commodity prices went up because of speculation, suddenly doubled in cost. And now you can't even know if you'll sell the 5,000 units, and you cancel your order and you file for bankruptcy, and you have 70,000 people who basically went out of a job because you couldn't afford the cost of the goods to sell enough to people. Now those 70,000 people are entered the labor force, but then get stimulus to stay at home for 18 months because the pandemic doesn't allow you to work. And now suddenly they're out of a job, and now you don't have labor anymore to actually do what you wanted to do. So now the commodity prices are high, which are speculative. The actual physical movement of goods is completely stymied, and people are out of a job. And that basically is a triple whammy that caused this problem to happen. Now, when the economy opened up and people started doing work again and people started getting goods again, everyone's talking about hyperinflation, but that hyperinflation hasn't actually trickled down to the actual cost of goods yet. And the reason it hasn't trickled down to the cost of goods is because it's been artificially subsidized by the money that's been printed. Either the government is giving out subsidies, or they're giving out incentives, or the workers are working for the same wage because they get extra money on the side, and that money is going to get pulled out of the system over the next 3 to 5 years. Now, you could also see them keep printing money, which is why everyone says the word stonks. Everything just keeps going up, nothing goes down.
Printer go burr.
Yeah, everything keeps going up only because you keep putting money in, printing money to keep the value of those things going up. Then everybody is on the same quote-unquote Ponzi scheme. So if you're China and Max is America and I am, say, Europe, okay, you printed money, he printed money, and I printed money. So between the three of us, we've all agreed that the cost of capital has gone down, and therefore the value of goods can basically go up. And so we print more money to make sure that we stay ahead of the curve. It's basically an unending amount of money that you print, which is why the crypto guys think that the cost of $1 is now completely debased, because you can just keep printing paper and everyone keeps spending paper and no one cares. Because the debt ceilings are just theoretical, right? No one really thinks the debt ceilings are ever going to be real. You can just keep printing money at international debt, and everybody owes each other money, and they all agree to keep, owing each other money, and then everyone's just in on the same group. And so that trickles down to actual markets in the business where I am producing goods in China. My Chinese guy doesn't know how to pay his people on time, and so basically he has to figure out how to raise his costs. But he can't raise his cost because I don't have demand at that price. And if I basically buy at a higher price and try to sell at a higher price, the people who have to pay for it at a higher price are out of a job or are in stimulus money and cannot generate enough money to get in. Meanwhile, anybody who's in an equity or a stock market or some sort of a speculative job is making shit tons of money and can afford that. But the percentage of people who can afford speculative income is very low compared to the people who can afford consumption income. And therefore, the consumption income is driving inflation to them, which makes the government print more money. And now you have a spiral.
Oh, wow.
So what the disparities between the top and the bottom will just get exacerbated a lot more.
That's right.
Essentially. Yeah, like a lot more around the world, and everyone's in on the same thing.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. So how much, so how do we explain, I'm trying to connect the dots, and I'm sure you can help me here. How do we explain the amount of backup off the ports of, like, let's say LA and things like that? Is that because of the close downs and then the opens and the pent up demands and then?
Yeah, so I think that it's all about, this has basically two factors going on. One is you had pent-up demand and you had a lot of product that had to ship out. Second, you're seeing a number of people get out there and start spending money they hadn't spent for a long time, or they had money they saved up that they haven't spent, or they figured out how to start businesses that they were doing. There's a lot of people out there who think that business and speculative income basically go hand in hand, which it kind of does in some ways. Because if you build a company, the value of your company is in the eyes of the beholder. Today, if you sell a piece of your equity at $10 million, or you sell a piece of your equity at $100 million, that's how much that person's willing to pay for it. So a person who's in a job who knows they're going to make $60,000 a year for the next 20 years knows that there is zero speculation they can do on that salary, and they would rather take a jump and figure out how to start a business and get customers to pay them for what they're doing. So you're going from a world or a generation of employees to a generation of entrepreneurs or business owners or self-employed people. That is causing massive amounts of shortage in the labor industry on both sides of the port. So that's the first problem. There was a notice recently that LA Port wanted to work nights and weekends and figure out how to do it, couldn't get past the union. Right? Wow. So that's one problem that happened.
And then you think, right, so you got the boats that are off the shore there, and then you got to have the crews to unload the boats, and then you got to have the truck, put the stuff, on, and then you got to put it to the temporary holding warehouses, and then you got to truck it out. It's like there's so much that has to happen, and so
it's one thing at a time that happens, right? It's one thing after another that is happening, and if you take those cascades and you compress them into a 60-day, 90-day timeline, that's how you have 28 boats sitting outside Untitled Beach. So that's one problem that's happening, but that problem normally eases up. It's called congestion, and congestion normally eases up because your demand and supply is not done. Amazon on average hires between 170 and 300,000 workers every Christmas and holiday season as temp workers, and they did that same thing at the beginning of COVID. Remember, Max, I told you that your inventory needs are going to skyrocket at the beginning of February, at the end of February, early March. Is because that's basically why it happened. Is because if you look at the amount of people that you need to balance out spikes in demand, the world of supply chain and the world of manufacturing is no longer this like even keel where you just keep going and you rise little by little. Now it's like peaks and valleys. You have a lot and then you have nothing, and then you have a lot and then you have nothing. And being able to sustain that needs highly capitalized, highly incentivized, and highly motivated people, both from a dollar perspective, both from a time perspective, and from a predictability perspective. If I'm making a hat, and I think that those hats are going to sell for the next 2 years, I'm producing as many hats as I can all the time, because I know that at the times of congestion and the times of non-congestion, I will then even out on my cost, and I'll be able to figure out what the predictability looks like. Because the sale is never going to be even. The sale is going to be up and down and up and down, like it has been now. That's going to be the future for the next 3 to 5 years. You're going to have intense periods of activity and intense periods of no activity, intense periods of activity again and no activity again. Whether it's climate change, whether it's pandemics, whether it's government problems, whether it's financial problems, whether it's some slowdown, some fight, some war somewhere. This is the new world we live in now. It's all basically like your heartbeat going up and down. And, the more irregular your heartbeat is, the less healthy you are.
Wow. And that's interesting too, because that starts to really mess with your cash conversion cycle and cash flow, right? Where if you're pushing out your accounts receivable and that cash conversion cycle starts to elongate, then you either need to finance some, get some leverage to buy the new inventory or something to bridge till you get paid. So, wow, that more important than ever to kind of have a grasp on all that, huh?
Right. The thing that I keep talking to our customers about, and the thing we talk about is like you have to have a balanced strategy about, okay, what do you think will be always needed and you can require? There's also the reason why DTC brands that are too niche or basically too premium suffered. And the reason they suffered is because people, the bottom 20% of the audience and the top 10% of the audience is basically expanding, and the middle 70% of the audience is shrinking, and they are basically getting absorbed by the fringes. So it's the fringes that are actually turning into a larger things and basically turns into this business. And so if you have a product offering for people who will buy stuff all the time, and then you have premium product offerings that can basically be hits driven, that allows you to then have the predictability around your cash flow and your margins. Then you then have a blended strategy. It's no longer a 1 and 0 strategy.
I love that. Awesome. All right, Pranay, you've made it to the rapid fire. That was such an incredible value add segment. All right, I'm going to shoot some questions at you, and then, you'll hit us with the answers. Are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay. Learning another language, overrated or underrated?
I'm sorry?
Learning another language, overrated or underrated?
Underrated.
Underrated. Because you speak 5 languages, correct?
Yeah, I speak a bunch of Indian languages. I understand a little bit of French, and I speak English. So yeah, definitely
Fair.
underrated.
Awesome. Standardized shipping containers, underrated or overrated?
Uh, okay, I'm going to hedge on that. It's right down the middle. I'll tell you why, because it all depends on the type of product. Yeah, so I would say neutral to that.
Okay, cool. Accurately rated. Perfect. The last mile problem, overrated, underrated?
Uh, it's overrated.
Overrated. I love it. Inventory management, overrated, underrated?
Definitely underrated.
I love it. I love it. USPS, overrated, underrated?
Tremendously underrated.
Tremendously underrated. Love it. Best country to operate a factory?
Best country to operate a factory. Oh man.
Not enough context.
No, I just think that every country is kind of buggered in its own way right now, and
Trade-offs.
I think that there's some trade-offs
Sure.
for every country. But if I was to operate a factory today, it all depends on whether it's automated or it's manual. So give you 2 answers. If you have an automated factory, the best place to operate it today is the US. If you have a manual factory which needs a lot of labor, the best place to operate it today is probably Vietnam or Cambodia.
Oh, very cool. Those are interesting answers. So if you've manufactured countless products, what's been your favorite?
My favorite product that I have manufactured, which was a lot of fun. I mean, when I define fun, it's probably, fun, something that didn't give me like a real heart attack. I used to produce this tube of fabric, which basically would be, you could basically make it in, it could do 27 different things. I used to call them tube heads. They were a kind of bandana. So it's literally just a tube. It's a seamless tube that's probably like 30 inches tall. So you could put it on your nose, you could put it like a balaclava, you could put it on your head, you could put it on your nose,
that's
on your
clever.
thread, anything on your hand, you could put it like a bandana. And you'd like this piece of paper that came with 30 different ways you could wear that tube, and it was literally a tube of fabric that you could basically do 30 different things with. And that was probably the most fun thing I did. It's the simplest and actually the most the utilitarian thing, and it was nice.
That sounds amazing. It sounds like something you'd see on like Sky Mall in the plane or something like that. That's really cool.
Yeah.
What's the best Indian meal?
The best,
Or like best, like a best entree or something like that.
probably biryani.
What is that?
So biryani, biryani is basically like, it's got rice, it's got meat, it's got flavor, it's got all this sorts. It's like I mean, imagine, I don't, have you eaten paella?
Yes.
Spanish? Yeah, so imagine the Indian version of paella with all the spices and all the stuff in it, like all the works. It's like really rich and really, really like heavy, but it's also amazing.
I love it. That's amazing. Favorite place traveled to and why?
Favorite place to travel to for me would probably be any island with snorkeling. Any island that has a nice reef, and probably because when you're underwater, people can't talk.
You can still sign though. I'm scuba certified, but yeah, you definitely can't talk. What's the favorite way you like to spend your time?
I love spending my time with. Right now, I have a 16-month-old son, so I like spending time with him, watching him grow. But I really love spending time writing about business, talking about business, and building businesses. I think that's probably my passion. I love that I get to do what I like to do, and that's my favorite thing to do in life.
That's beautiful, Pranay. Okay, last question. Or actually, I got two more for you. What is your favorite book?
My favorite book is The Alchemist.
Fantastic recommendation. I think that's the second time, right? I think that's the second
Yeah,
rec.
yeah.
I love that. It's a fantastic read. Okay, last question. If you could have dinner with three people, dead or alive, fictional or non-fictional, who would they be and why?
Three people that are alive. Henry Ford. Uh, Probably who was the guy who ran the uh, East India Trading Company? Whoever the guy who started East India Trading Company.
Yep, I'm blanking, but
I forgot the name.
East India, is that what it is? East India
Yeah,
trade?
yeah, East
Dutch
India.
India?
and
I'll find
probably Akbar, King Akbar.
Oh, very cool. How fun. That's fantastic, Pranay. This has been such an amazing ride through the supply chain,
it.
just intricacies. Man, it sounds like you just ship it, you buy it and you ship it, but there's just
There's a
so
lot.
many, it's like a Rube Goldberg machine, right? Like you take the top off and you're like, oh my gosh, there's all this stuff going in here. So I appreciate the time today. How can people find you, and give us a little bit more information on manufacturing and how people can get involved there if they need to save some monies and make some more monies? And so, yeah, give us the spiel there.
Yeah, absolutely. So we supply and finance inventory. We do as little as $1,000 of inventory, as much as $100 million of inventory at a time. We are we I am mine is my email is my first name at manufacture.com. It's pretty straightforward. And you could go to manufacture.com and look at what we do. We're a managed marketplace, so we're not Alibaba. So it's like, if you want to, either build a product, add a product, expand your vendor lane, change your vendor, stock for financing. Our goal in the middle term is to help brands not sell to roll-up companies. So, all these roll-ups that are coming, the reason they're buying roll-ups at the $1 to $5 million range is because brands have cash flow problems at that level.
Yep,
so one
100%.
of our key goals with these brands is to help them skate through it, because nobody buys a brand if you're not selling product. Nobody buys a brand if you don't have demand. So if you have demand and you have only an inventory or a cash problem, we want to help those brands actually stay independent. So that's basically what we're excited about. We also have an amazing affiliate program. So if you're a 3PL or digital marketing agency, or if you're somebody who helps a brand succeed in the world, we will literally pay you for referrals to brands, not just once, but over the period of over the first year, and help you add manufacturing to your ability for the brands that allow them to stay relevant. 3PLs are getting crowded out. Marketing agencies are getting crowded out because it's getting harder and harder to build brands without processes and without formulas. And so the manufacturing side of it is what we do. We do manufacturing that doesn't come with a formula. We are not AliExpress. You can no longer drop ship something from AliExpress or Overrated and hope to build a brand on it. You can no longer just buy something of Alibaba and hope to build a brand on it. All those things are gone. Now you have to care about the product you build. You have to worry about where it's coming from. You need somebody to help you make decisions on every part of that brand process or the product process. And you need to care about how it's sold so that you can buy more. And that's what we help.
Man, I love that. We'll put all the links in the show notes so everybody can get involved. Max, do you have anything else?
I think we covered a lot here.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Is the guy you're looking for from the Dutch East India Trading Company, is it Francis Drake? Is that the name?
It's not. It's just East India Trading Company. It was probably started by a private person in Britain. I need to find them.
I have founded by
John
Watts, George White.
I'm sorry?
John Watts?
Yeah, that's probably it. Francis Drake was just working for that guy who formed it.
Yeah.
I got
it was, you see, it's in 1915, 1999, three merchants met and cited their intention to basically go, I don't know who these merchants were, but those were the people I would want to talk to.
Supply chain killers for sure, just crushers there. All right, folks, we'll wrap up. We are on Twitter at Triple Whale. We can get you into the best analytics tool out there at trytriplewhale.com. That's all we have for you today. Thanks for stopping in, and be sure to sign up for Whale Mail, our newsletter, and we'll see you on the flip. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Thank you so much for having me.
That's fantastic, guys.
Great.
That's
Yeah.
Okay, good.
So if people want to really solve their Christmas problem, they still have like 60 days to figure it out. First of all, if you're working through Amazon, I can't help you because Amazon is going to be a shit show in November when they're trying to pull product into their warehouses. A lot of people use FBA and they're up shit creek because they have a huge dependency on Amazon. And Amazon have trucks up the wazoo despite expanding their capacity a lot. Amazon has probably has the best intelligence on logistics and supply chain anywhere in the world, and they know exactly what's going on there. On if you don't fulfill by Amazon and you do your own thing, the options are, number one, don't use freight out of China. Basically figure out fulfillment offshore in China, and then start fulfilling individual packages by courier directly to your customers depending on your ticket size and ticket
From
size.
China? Straight from China?
China
And there's
China
plenty of
or Hong Kong.
solutions. There's solutions for that. I've used them.
China or Hong Kong. And so you also accept the duty because under $800 it's like free. So you basically are shipping direct to the consumer from there. It could take you a little bit of tooling to do, but you should think about that. So you can literally have DHL and FedEx basically consolidate air shipping and bring it in. The three things it does is, number one, it normalizes the air freight rate even if it's a higher price. Right now air freight's at about $10 a kilo. But if you're shipping direct to consumer and $10 a kilo is the cost of them bringing it, a consolidated list of hundreds of packages to here and then pushing them into the USPS network, it's exactly what people are doing in Mexico for the 123 thing, where they avoid duties and they have their warehouses overseas, but you're doing it without having to bring the goods over from China, and you do it straight there. Lots of people don't want to do that because they have a problem, but this will allow you to hit your shipping targets. Even if USPS and UPS are backed up, it's like a few days, it's normally not that bad, and they are far more professional at figuring out systemic supply chain than we are. The second thing that you can do is basically start bringing in smaller quantities constantly, like every week, every 10 days, bring in quantities. And instead of bringing in large container loads and waiting for them to happen, you're backing up your supply chain. Ship 5,000 when you have it, ship when you have it, ship when you have it, and then have it in here. That's two ways that I think you can save it, and you're still going to get screwed on supply chain capacity, manufacturing capacity till January.
Wow. Wow. So, I mean, I know I've personally run like warehouse out of China before. Like not me personally, but I've worked with companies there, and they can get stuff here USPS. You know, it's not like the e-packet takes 30 days back in the day. You know, they can get it here in like 5 to 7 days. Some of them. It's definitely worth looking at for people.
That is going to be something that's going to expand in usage over the next maybe 12 months, where people will start even just stop using commercial freight. And I think that's a really interesting way of de-risking the entire logistics problem. It's a blow to Shopify and Amazon and 3PLs here, and that's the other reason why I feel like 3PLs here are becoming more of an option than a choice.
Interesting. Oh man, that's fascinating.
Yeah, offshoring 3PL and using commercial routes of freight will probably be the next way to disrupt people, and who knows, we might end up doing it.
Especially if you can go to like, not necessarily out of China, but even a place like maybe a little bit closer to the U.S., right? And ship straight to there, and then utilize some of that low-cost labor.
Hong Kong is next door. Korea is next door.
But what about like going to a place like in South America where labor is pretty cheap, right? And doing it out of there.
Yeah, the problem with moving cargo across the ocean is that, again, US has probably got one of the most streamlined importation systems in the world. You can literally take a cargo from not cleared to cleared in a day. In India, in South America, it could take a week or 2 weeks at a time. And
Oh,
then
wow.
you also have the problem with systemic corruption, you have a problem with systemic bureaucracy, you have paper documents, you have manual entries. All that basically adds to the complexity. You do not want that to happen simply because that then actually is. I remember what I told you about last mile from the wholesale point of view. Last mile delivery from the freight, getting freight to LA is 30% of the problem or 50% of the problem. Getting freight from LA port to your warehouse is probably more of a problem than it is getting from China to here.
Whoa. That's mind blowing
Because
to
of the
me.
backup. Yeah, and so that's basically what I feel about people on Christmas right now for the short term. If you're an Amazon FBA, ship air, ship whatever you have to, get the goods here. And if you feel that you have to take a haircut on your profits, do it.
Yeah, it's better to make a little bit than not make anything, right?
Yes, especially if you spend all this money on, demand and then you don't have the supply to capture it. That's a brutal place to be.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, cool.
Sweet